Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today something exciting for you. We are finally going to take the BAE 146, the upcoming release from JustFlight, and we're going to take it into London City using this steep approach there, of course. It is a really interesting airport and this is a fascinating aeroplane. This is the first time I'm going to have landed it on the channel, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, looking forward to giving it a try at what it's famously known for. Flying that steep approach, glide path of around 5.5 degrees into London City, and today we have the more spectacular approach. The easterly wind means we're going to land in on 09. So at the moment we're just heading out to join the hold. From there we're going to fly the arrival and fly that steep approach, routing taking us in over the Shard, which you can see here, then past Canary Wharf, then in Dome and into land on that steep approach. Right, let's get started with the video. This is a preview build, so it's not the final release, which should be coming out fairly soon. We've talked about the pricing already, but it's looking like hopefully within the next week or so this could be in your hands, fingers crossed. So yeah, it's something quite exciting to try out, but as I said, this could have a few bugs and so on. It is still the preview build, but yeah, thank you to JustFlight for sending it over so we can get a bit of a sneak preview of it. Right, let's get started. So to start with, we are just descending now down to 5,000 feet, where if I just make sure I go to, let's go to vertical speed. Yeah, we're going to descend to 5,000 feet. Let me just use the control wheel steering, which we talked about before, and we're going to set up for the approach. So in the descent, we have a few options, LNAV, VNAV, but the FMC is currently the default one. The custom FMC is on the way, which will be free of charge for those of you who do purchase this. It will come out a little bit later. So I'm going to use vertical speed, the more basic modes, which is what this airplane was originally designed with in mind, obviously. By pressing vertical speed, there's nowhere to actually select it, so I have to use control wheel steering. I've talked about this in previous videos, but just to recap, what I have to do is assign a button to control wheel steering. I've got the autopilot engaged, you can see that up here. Weirdly, the engage button is down here. That's how you turn on the autopilot. And then what I can do is I press my control wheel steering button. You'll see the autopilot light go out, and it would also say so down here. So I press it, there we go, sync, and the autopilot light goes out. So now I'm controlling the airplane. I can then adjust the pitch and let it change until the vertical speed I fancy. So let's say 1,000 feet per minute. Now I let go, and the airplane will resume at that vertical speed, and it will try and maintain it. So quite simple, quite easy to use, actually quite an intuitive system, really quite nice. You can see out is armed and now it's gone green, so it was white, now it's green. That's a format we are very familiar with. It's quite a common thing in modern airliners. Right, there we go, 5,000 feet on this heading, and I'm just going to fly around. We're just to the south of London a bit as we set up for this arrival. There's London over there. So let's slow down a bit, we don't want to go storming off. So here is the approach, famous approach into London City. We're going to head to this Alkin waypoint. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward to get to. And then using a bit of VOR tracking, we'll go and fly the procedure, which will involve heading in. Actually, no, we won't. We're going to radar vector ourselves, much more realistic. Flying this full procedure is very rare. It's very busy airspace. Obviously, London Heathrow off to the west. So I'm going to radar vector us in a way that is typical for an approach into 09. Effectively coming in from the south, we'll head along downwind and then turn right here over the Shard. It's a low platform altitude, just 2,000 feet we start this steep approach from. That is partly caused by all the busy airspace. London Stansted, here's London Gatwick, so many airports around, so yeah, lots for us to avoid. So now let's bring that heading bug round to the north and let's start heading up towards central London. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Obviously it is a bit easier to click on this 2D panel, which is nice to see included, and then you can scroll on that. And that way I can keep looking forward and keep the instruments a bit better in my scan. So I'm going to keep the speed at around 200 knots. No auto thrust, doing this manually. And we'll start off by heading north. There we go. Right, so what do we need to set up to fly this approach? Let's get rid of those. Well, obviously we are going to need to tune the ILS 111.15. So I do have big N up here. If I select this switch from active, I can actually change the active frequency. That's a very rare system. There it is. We have active frequency change in this aeroplane. If I change it to pre, I change the standby frequency effectively. So let's put 111.15. So this is the more traditional way. 111.15, and then leave that on pre, and then I can swap them over with this little button. So there we go. We now have the ILS 111.15. I'll put it onto both sides. 1115. Great. Now I'll have the DME displayed down here. We're 18.5 miles away from the ILS, and that has to be selected on up here. Otherwise, if I had that off, you don't see it. That took me a while to work out. So there we go. That is now on. and we are active on the ILS frequency. Now the inbound course 092, so I need to change the course. This is quite easy to do, pretty traditional course wheel over here. I've got it set to nav1, and I'm going to put in 092. I'm going to do this for both sides. There we go, there's the ILS course 092 set on both sides. Got the frequency tuned, and all I need to do to arm the approach properly to make the autopilot fly it, quite simple. I need to press the V/L, which is VOR/localizer. Keep the speed up a little bit. So V/L will arm the localizer, and then GSL for glide slope. So we've got to press 2 buttons to make it fly this approach. This is obviously a steep approach. That's what it's famous for. Oh, let's watch out. Look how close we're getting in so easily. So I'm just going to hold us off a bit longer. Let's bring that heading rug round. We'll just head south for a little bit. Bit of lateral holding, this could be called. So what we need to do is prepare for the flap landing we're going to use. So here on this little handy card, we've got all the different settings. So obviously we're going to land flap 33. We'll go for full VREF or 107. So I need to set 107, which it's done by clicking on it automatically. You can drag these if you want. So there, 107 about there. So that is our VREF. The approach maybe a little bit faster. So I'm thinking if I was about 107, maybe 112, something like that. I'm not a 146 pilot. I never have been, so I'm sure I'm doing lots of things wrong here. But yeah, we need to have that set up. So I'm assuming they would have landed flat full. Most airliners that I know of, the way London City is flown, is to have more drag flap out, because otherwise the problem we have on the approach into London City is the engines will be spooled down quite low because of that steep approach, so we don't need much thrust from the engines. That means if we try and go around, it takes them a while to spool up, which is why we want more flap outs. That would definitely help us. Also, it will stop the speed increasing as we come down the approach. Now, because we're going to be descending so fast, the airplane may get upset. It may start shouting at us saying sync rate, sync rate. So we press this little steep button, steep approach. That will arm its arm in white. It will go green, I believe, when we are fully configured flying down the approach, to demonstrate that it is active and accounting for that. Fantastic. Okay, I don't think there's much else for us to do. No auto brake system that I can find. We can actually see the different brake temperatures. Look at this. You can select each wheel, outer, inner, outer, and if you press max, it will just show you the maximum temperature around. So yeah, 6 degrees. That'll be absolutely fine for what we're doing. Not using an NDB. We'll just squawk 7,000 as normal. The parking brake obviously needs to be off. So let us now head ourselves back north and go and fly this approach, and we'll descend down and enjoy the spectacular steep approach into London City. This is really interesting one. Air traffic often for the for 09 runway will vector you straight over to the top of the Shard, which is this building here at 1,016 feet. So you're less than 1,000 feet above it as you cruise over and then intercept the ILS. Quite tight vectoring, very busy airspace, of course. So we're descending from only 3.4 miles from the runway. So the final approach is very short, as you can imagine, just 3.4 miles as you come down with a 5.5 degree angle. So with our ground speed, with a bit of a headwind and our approach speed of about 112, we're looking like we'd be coming down at something like just over 1,000 feet per minute in the descent. So quite straightforward. Minima here, we're going to go for Cat C minima, which is 444 feet above the ground, 461 altitude. We do actually have a radio altimeter, so I can put in, oh, no, don't do that, there we go. Now we can't be that accurate. I'm going to put 440 in. There we go. This heavy tab takes a bit of getting used to in this format. I'm going to put in 440. Actually, let's round it up. Let's put 450. We tend to round things up in aviation. There we go, 450. And hopefully that will come alive. I'm not sure if it will speak to us as we fly the descent. So here we go now, heading straight in towards London. And yeah, I'm going to position us for a downwind where we'll vector ourselves onto the ILS. Now you guys have probably realized that I've skipped over a few things. In the descent, for example, we have to adjust our thrust management system. So you can see here I've got it in sync, but in the descent we would have pressed descent. That way it would automatically account for keeping enough N2 to continue to pressurize the aeroplane and so on. So that way, even if you bring it to idle, the TMS can stop it actually reducing the thrust too much and causing a problem, although obviously we're a bit lower down now. So yeah, it's quite an in-depth system, and as I said, this thrust management system is a whole video on its own. It's really quite something. other things we might fiddle with during the flight, and we'll definitely look at in future streams, which I'm excited to do very soon. We would need to put, for example, the AC pump from auto, or maybe we'll turn on the PTU for the approach, things like that. There's all sorts of different systems that you would do in a complicated airplane like this to make sure that you keep on top of things. But as it stands, we are getting ourselves ready to fly this approach. We're going to skip the downwind. We'll effectively come in on the base leg and turn it over the shard, which you can see coming up in front of us now, actually. Here we are now coming in downwind. We're quite a wide downwind. London City itself is, well, that's Biggin Hill. London City is all over there. There's the Millennium Dome, and there's where our approach will be. So we've got room now to descend down. So I've grabbed my little wheel. I do like this. We'll descend down to 2,000 feet platform altitude for this approach. There it is. Let's start turning right. Again, this would normally be air traffic control's radar vectors. And then we're going to descend down to our 2,000 feet, and I'm going to use a vertical speed. So I'm going to press, where's it gone? Oh, I've got to arm the altitude. Very important you arm it, or it will just descend through it. Then I'm going to press vertical speed. And now I'm going to use control wheel steering. So pressing my button, you'll see sync. The autopilot's out. I'm going to do, let's set that to 1,100 feet per minute there. And the airplane should now descend itself. And I can bring that thrust to idle as we're increasing to 250 knots. Now we're descending. So I want to be nice and slow and fully configured before I start down that approach from 2,000 feet. It's a steep one. So we're going to get that speed back. We've got the 111.15 frequency tuned, which is correct. I imagine there is an audio panel where we could listen to it. Cabin secured for landing. You can actually move the slider as well, which is quite good fun. Here we go then. By the way, frame rates, you can see 25 frames per second, which is not bad. In the default airplane, I'm using Orbex London here, so this does always hurt the frame rates. In the default aircraft, I can see some lower frame rates, funnily enough. Right, there's Crystal Palace. Let's head north now as we get ready to fly the approach. So going to north. I'm just going to use a bit of speed brake. Our famous speed brake on this airplane. Round at the back there. There we go. Absolutely fantastic. Really effective as well. Really helps us get in on the final approach. So I'm going to leave that out a little bit as we just use it to slow the airplane down. Speed's coming back now below 200 knots, and let's start getting our flap out. Now, flap limiting speeds I do find a little bit tricky to find, so hopefully I'm doing this right. So let's get that speed back a bit more. Descending now down to our last level off. We've got 600 feet to go. I might use control wheel steering just to reduce that rate of descent a little bit. Let's get the first stage of flap out, and we'll get that howl going. Here's the view out the front then. And again, Orbex London and Orbex South are what I'm using. The ILS is now becoming identified. Start adding the power. We don't want it to wash off too quickly. Really pushes that nose down, the extra flap. They're really big and really powerful flaps, most certainly. So now I'm going to bring that heading bug round to point at the shard. So we're going to level up at 2,000 feet. And there's the shards. Now, landing gear horn is just that speed comes back. So let's get ready to get our next stage of flap out. 24 degrees. Flaps going to 2. Again, I'm not sure what the normal configuration is. Here's the shard in front of us now. If that's a bit of a surreal feeling, yeah, trust me, it is in the real airplane, or in a real airplane doing this approach as well. Wind is coming slightly from the right, so you can expect tight vectors like this into London City. Speed is way back there, but as you can see, nose attitude quite reasonable. Let's get that speed brake in. That's not helping the situation. No wonder it needs so much power. There's London City over there. Right, we have now got the deviation warning light, but that's fine. We are coming in to intercept it. I'm going to press VOR lock, and I'm going to press GSL, and hopefully it will now intercept. Bit of a sharp intercept that, so I'm just going to bring us right a little bit. 060, 30 degree intercepts are pretty normal on these sort of approaches. There's the shard as we turn overhead. Let's now put the gear down. You can hear all those hydraulic noises and get the speed back. We'll go to flaps 30. Hopefully any second we'll see that localizer. Flaps going to 30. Remember, our approach speed is all the way back. We said about it's meant to be 107 VREF, so I think 117 actually. I had a look in the manual. There's a localizer, so localizer is now green and the glide slope is white, so it's armed, but it's not active yet. Let's get the speed back again. Final stage then. There's the runway in front of us. There's the Canary Wharf and the Millennium Dome. Speed coming back. Glide slope is now here. We'll see it drop very quickly when it does come to life, so we need to be ready for it. I think what I'll do is I'll just put that last stage of flap out just as we start down the glide slope, just to give it. I don't want to be sat there with too much flap out for too long. Right, there's the speed coming back. Here's the glide slope. Let's get the power on. Get flaps to 33. To be fair, there's not much difference between 30 and 33. Here's the glide slope. Down we go. Glide slope goes white. It is now active. And there's the nose, and here's the drop into London City. Here we are then on final approach now with the Millennium Dome on our right. I've got the speed at just about 115, which we're on about 117, I believe. I've added a bit, or in fact 105, about 115 should work out for us actually. So let's keep it about here. We've got the speed brake out in order to make sure the engines aren't sitting at idle, so that is allowing us to have a safe amount of thrust if we need to go around. So next step from here is we have full flap obviously. We just need to disconnect the autopilot and land. Tricky part here is just getting that nose up enough to make sure we land on the main wheels and also don't float down past the end of the touchdown zone. So we get the unique challenge of having both a short runway at London City and a very steep final approach, just to make it extra difficult. So we're going to take out the autopilot. We'll do a two-stage flare effectively. I'm not sure if that's what they used on the 146, but there we go. We'll give it a go. And the idea is to just reduce that rate of descent to a safe amount whilst also allowing us to land within the touchdown zone. And then we're going to have to get on the manual brakes ourselves. So speed's looking good, about 110. I don't want to be fast, because if I'm fast and I flare, then I could end up with the aeroplane just going back up in the air again. So it has got to be a pretty precise final approach. I just had the minimums called out, so that seems like that little radio altimeter down here does work. Autopilot coming off then, and it's a very unusual picture. As you get down this low in London City, obviously, you start to get turbulence off these buildings around. Keeping that 1100 feet per minute descent, we don't want to get ourselves high at this point and undo all of our hard work. Speed starting to trickle back just a little bit, and there we go, coming in over the threshold. We got to 3 reds, cheating a little bit here, into the first stage of the flare. Now power to idle, get the nose up, get the nose up, get the nose up, and there's touchdown. And we'll now just keep it straight. There's no reversers to deploy, but hopefully those speed brakes have deployed up the back. And on the wing, we'll get on the manual brakes. And there we go. Welcome to London City. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope it's been of interest to you. It's been great fun getting to grips, or not even to grips, just getting to try out this this really unique airline, a really interesting, as I said before, piece of aviation history. So I hope you've enjoyed it. There'll be more videos to come, as well as live streams, including live streaming obviously this BAE 146 when we get the chance. Otherwise, there'll be plenty more Airbus guides and tutorials coming to the channel soon, as well as live streams in plenty of other airliners. So if you'd like to see those, do please subscribe to the channel and you'll be updated on those. That's it for today then. Soon to be released, this 146, as I said, upcoming from JustFlight. Do please keep safe and well. We'll see you again in another video or live stream very soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye.